I am so excited. It's going to be powerful. These two women, I sat across from Sarah McIntyre at her house, and she told me her story. And I've known Sarah for a while, and I just was in awe at her story. And I said, you're going to share that at Moms with Swords. And then Ann, our discipleship director, and the one who does all the slides, y'all, Ann, every week, bless her, love her, does the slides every week, homeschools her boys. So my sweet friend Ann does this every week. She was like, Joy, there's a girl in my huddle. You got to have her speak. She's got to come. So Lindsay Powell. So I want to invite Sarah and Lindsay up to the stage, and they are going to share transformational stories with us this morning. So would you welcome my sweet, powerful sisters, Lindsay and Sarah. All right, I got your tissue, Sarah.
Thank you.
I feel like Oprah today. This is my Oprah.
You need some?
I've even got my glasses on.
Oh.
I really feel like Oprah.
Okay.
Oh, Sarah, are we ringing? Josh, are we ringing? Okay. All right, Lindsay, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
So, Lindsay, just tell them how long you've been at Moms with Swords. How long have you been here? Because I don't think I even know that.
I started in January, or last semester.
Last semester.
This is my second semester.
So that would have been the prayer.
Circling prayer.
Circling prayer? Okay, okay. All right. And so, Lindsay, your story starts, your mother died. How old were you?
I was 5. She died. We all know, I'm pregnant and I'm going to cry, so it'll just come out. But she died when I was 5. She had dropped us off at Mount Perrin and was on her way to go work out, and my brother was in the car, and she died instantly. And so my brother, by the grace of God, was totally unharmed, but she died instantly. So I was 5.
Okay. And so your dad raised you.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about how you met your husband. I think you said it was on a blind date. Tell us a little bit about that story of you and John meeting.
Well, I was freshly 22, and as much as I had grown up in the faith as a child, I had lots and lots of wounds from my mom passing away, my dad not exactly living a life that was according to the word. And so I sought to fill those wounds with as many things, alcohol, boys, college things that I could do. And my husband and I actually talked to each other briefly on Facebook and then went on a blind date to get coffee. And surprisingly, we waited 2 weeks, but first time was the charm. And I told him we really needed to talk a couple weeks later, and he said, yeah, we do. And so I showed up at his house, and we went and sat on his bed, and he said, okay, well, you go first. And I said, okay, I'm pregnant. And he looked at me and said, well, I was going to tell you we didn't need to see each other anymore. I said, well, sorry about that. So we had a really rough start. He was angry, as a lot of men would be. He did not know the Lord at the time, and he wanted me to do what a lot of people do in college, and he wanted me to sweep it under the rug. He wanted me to take care of it. And again, I grew up in the faith, and as much as I had walked away from the Lord, the Spirit was so present in my life at that time, and I just said no. I can't do that. I was alone. I didn't have a job. My parents, I thought I loved this guy, so I was not going to make him take any responsibility. I was like, okay, sure, I'll, raise the baby on my own with no money and no job and no schooling, nothing. And my parents said, no, absolutely not. You've got to find another alternative. So it was at that point that we started pursuing adoption. And we went through that for 7 months. And my now husband, and I found a family in Athens, and they were perfect. Both of our moms have red hair. This family, they both had red hair. They were Georgia fans, and my husband is a diehard Georgia fan, so that was a really big deal. And they were perfect. They were everything that we thought that we wanted to raise our daughter. But the problem is that I was just sick. I was sick about it. This wasn't what I wanted. I didn't have a mom, and I had always dreamed of being a mom and having this sweet baby inside of me, and it was just such a gift. And it broke my heart. It was 9 long, long, long months. And as I said, I had many different wounds, from feeling abandoned when my mom left to feeling abandoned when my dad didn't treat me very well. And then here I was pregnant, and my husband, knowing that we were going to go through adoption, decided that it was better for him not to tell anyone about me. So I was hidden. I was once again, my inner self, my heart was told that you're not good enough to be shared. Not even this guy cares about you. And the saddest part was that I remember vividly calling my best friend when I found out I was pregnant, before I had even told him. And I said, you know what? I knew my whole life that I was just too crazy for anybody to commit to, and no one would possibly choose me. And here's my chance. Like, here is this guy that now I'm having his baby, and we'll be together forever. And I was just so empty and really did not feel valued at all, that I thought that this is my only way. This is my only way to feel loved. And he rejected me. And not only that, but he kept me hidden for 9 very long months.
And so when did y'all decide? Tell us a little bit about that. So adoption's on the table. Something happened in that your dad and stepmom divorced, and John's parents divorced as well. Like, what was the turning point that we're going to keep this baby? What was the turning point there?
So the divorce actually came a couple years after, or 2 years after my daughter was born. But 2 days before my due date, I was 39 and 6 days pregnant. And due to a bad situation at home, I had started staying with John and his roommate. And all of a sudden, John didn't come home from work. An hour passed, a second hour passed, a third hour passed. And he wasn't answering his phone, text messages, or anything. And 3 hours later, he walks in the door, and he just had tears streaming down his face. And he said, I need to talk to you. And so we went into his bedroom, and he said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I have this overwhelming feeling that we just can't go through with this. We can't give our daughter away. And so 2 days, I was 22, and 2 days before our daughter was born, we decided to keep her. And all I had, okay, so when you're giving a baby up for adoption, you have different options. And the one thing that we chose her middle name, which was Anne, which was my mom's middle name. And we had a pink UGA onesie that she was going to wear the day she was born. And so that's what we were sending her home with. And that's all we had. We had no diapers, we had no burp cloths, we had no crib, no car seat, nothing. So we decided 2 days before. The next day, I was in labor, and we were walking through Babies R Us buying a travel system. We didn't even have enough money to buy a travel system, but the people I nannied for had offered to cover the cost of that if anything happened to where we could change our minds. So she was born, and again, I had been hidden for 9 months. So the day that my daughter was born, we spent that whole day meeting each other's families for the first time, calling friends and family, and people started calling around and collecting things, and Carly wore a lot of green and a lot of blue her first couple months, because that's just what our friends had. But we left the hospital with hospital diapers, a pink UGA onesie, which UGA played that Saturday and lost to South Carolina, and as many diapers as the hospital would give us. I mean, we just kept piling in the duffel bags, and that's all we had. And so I laugh now because I'm on my 4th, and the things that you need when you leave the hospital and that you need before you set that up are very different than what we had our first time. But John and I, we decided to keep Carly. We didn't know how it was going to work. In fact, we didn't even really know each other that well, because we had spent I remember vividly the first date that we went on out in public. We just went to a movie and went and saw Knocked Up, of all movies. And I stayed at the end and just cried because they had a baby girl and I was having a baby girl. But it was the first time that we had been out in public together. And so we started from the beginning. My dad had remarried and my parents were believers. And so that was our real only example we had of what it looked like to have a family or be a family. And so we started to try to get to know each other. I knew after watching the Lord show up with our daughter that I couldn't marry a non-believer. I couldn't marry as much as I cared for him, and my heart was so excited to have this guy to love me and believe in me and be there for me and to have this baby. I just knew, like, something's got to change. He's got to come to know the Lord. And we started going to church with my parents. And John fell in love with the pastor. At the time, North Metro had a pastor that was used to be a football player, and they were very involved in football. And he was like, "Oh, well, I like football, and I like to have a beer when I watch football. So this guy, like, if he can love Jesus, I can love Jesus." So I was like, "Yes, you can." So he came to know the Lord, and we got married 2 years afterwards. And as Joy alluded to, 7 months later, my parents announced that they were getting divorced. My dad had hidden addictions, and we had no idea what was going on. And a year after that, John's parents divorced as well. So we were by ourselves. We were filled with wounds that had not been handled from early in our marriage. We had no example of what it looked like, of what a godly marriage looked like, and we felt lost. But it was at that point, that was the turning point for us of, we've got a lot of junk in our bags that we've brought in, and we've just watched both of our parents go through divorce, and we have a choice. Like, we can either buckle down and be the Abraham and Sarah and forge our own way and start this new generation of what it would look like to live unbroken in sin and to break those strongholds, or we can allow our past to dictate us.
Yes, it's talk about foundations. So you guys were building on foundations that your parents' foundation, John's parents' foundation. So I remember Beth Moore saying one time that God's mighty hand is going to sweep, and it's going to knock everything down that's standing, because he's going to show you what is not going to be, what is bowing. And it's like, that's like God just kind of allowed every foundation to be knocked down so that you guys could build, like you said, to build your foundation on the foundation of foundations. So where are y'all in your marriage at this time? So this has happened. You just resolve. I guess there's just a holy resolve that you and John had, that we're gonna do this. So that was a turning point. I was in your marriage, and as a mom. How old was Carly at this point?
She was 5, and I had a 2.5-year-old son as well at that point.
Wow. Okay. So where are you here? Like, what? This has happened. You're deciding we're gonna dig our heels in, and we're gonna do this right. Tell us what happens, because that's when you got to Moms with Swords, even.
Yes. It was about a year after that. I had gone back to work, and I had my third child, a little girl named Caroline, my little bright redheaded little girl. And we had her, and I was working, and we had an amazing small group. My husband had an amazing Bible study, and we were pouring into the Word, but I still felt this void. I felt, my mom had passed away, and then the mom that I had from my dad's marriage was now my stepmom, and she is an amazing woman, but there's this gap of what does that look like? Like, I don't have a mom, and here I'm trying to be a mom, and I don't know what that looks like. And I had actually gone to boot camp at the YMCA for a long time before I went back to work, and I remember seeing the signs for Moms with Swords, and it wasn't something I could do at the time. And then my friend Taylor told me, well, we're meeting on Thursdays. Like, do you think you could make that work? And so I went to my boss and I said, I really need to go part-time. Like, it's just something that I need. And if possible, could you also make it so that I'm part-time and don't work on Thursday or Friday? And so really, by the grace of God, he was like, yes, absolutely, go for it. So I showed up at Moms with Swords last January, and we were doing circling prayer, and it was amazing. And it was actually really neat because my best friend Laura Hoffman, we had gone through that same book through her adoption with her son Zechariah, and we had circled his adoption over and over and over again, and so many things had broken down. And so to show up here not knowing what we were going to do, and for it to be circling prayer was just amazing, and I knew that I was where I needed to be. And so
Which is why I always tell you, find a target mom, but don't badger them to come, because they're going to come when it's time for them to come. It wasn't time for her to come. Sarah has the same story. It wasn't time for Lindsay to get here 2 sessions before that. Circling prayer, it was time. She was ready. So I just think I just love how it's not any of us saying, come, 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 come. It's Jesus saying, now. So I love that he got you here. So continue.
Yes, he did. And the timing was, it was amazing. But here I was sitting Thursday after Thursday and listening to what Joy was saying, and we had an incredible huddle, and all I could do was cry the whole time because I wanted so badly to implement these things in my home, and I wanted our life to look like this, and I wanted my children to be encircled in the power of prayer. But I had this marriage that was just crumbling. It was hard and it was not easy, and I kept thinking, like, how am I gonna, I'm in control of myself, but I'm not in control of my husband, and we both love the Lord, but we're not together. And the next week, we did confession. We talked about the power of confession. And so I wrote Anne an email and said, look, this is where we are, and I need help. I need prayer. And I want my prayers to be powerful, and I know that in order to do that, it takes confessing. And this is where we are, and we're struggling. And so we began to pray, and she had this vision of 2 people united by this rope, and that they prayed, and the prayers circled around them so quickly and so intensely that it began to burn as a fire, like Natalie shared last time. And that fire was so bright that it shone for everyone to see. And so that began to be the vision for my marriage and for our family. And the next week we did, we went through Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. And we circled over this verse over and over again. And again, the Lord's timing was just perfect. Some friends of ours got a diagnosis about their unborn daughter. We walked through them with that. We walked through different job losses with other friends, and it was just amazing to just speak that over them, that it's a command. Like, it's the Lord commanding us to come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. And then we got to fighting prayer. And we had put the confession verse on our blackboard in the kitchen, and we had talked to the kids about it, how it's so much better to bring these things to light. And when you bring them to light, the enemy has no power over them. And 2 weeks before that, before spring break, my daughter's school went through bullying and had a talk with them about bullying. And I don't know what it was about it, but it just captured her mind and her thoughts. And she felt so guilty, and she kept coming to me saying, Mommy, I'm having this thought about somebody. And I would walk through it with her like, well, are you saying this to the person? And she's like, no, but I'm thinking it, and so I just want to tell you. And it's like this wheel that started spinning, and it spun faster and faster and faster in her mind, and she was just paralyzed with wanting to tell me every single thing she thought, every single thing she did. And something that's meant to be used for good quickly got turned and was just not good for her. She wasn't wanting to play with friends. She wasn't wanting to do anything. Just the light from her just drained out. And we were sitting at dinner one night, and she said something very cruel to her brother, and I just snapped and said, "Go to your room. Like, you can't be at the table. Go to your room, and I'll talk to you later." And my husband looked at me, and he said, "You've come home every week talking about circling our family and your children in prayer. Like, now's the time. Are you going to do it? Are you going to do what you keep talking about, or are you just going to let it go?" And so, of course, that was a knife to my heart. I was like, "Okay, God." So I went upstairs, and for 2 hours that night, and for the next 5 nights, we prayed, and I read scripture over her, and we took the lies and looked up truth, and then we prayed the truth. And then at times that I didn't have the words, I just held my hand on her back and said, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." And it was exhausting, and there was times where I was like, "Lord, like, come on, can we overcome this?" But it created such an incredible time in our house of that dependence and that need for prayer, and watching the power of prayer, and then seeing the light in my daughter's eyes as she figured out, like, the Lord answers these prayers. Like, we're praying for this, and then it's coming true. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful time. So we were coming to the end of Moms with Swords, and we were fighting for our family. We were fighting for our marriage. And I was on this mountaintop. I gathered girls from our small group. We weren't meeting at the time. And I said, "You guys, we have this opportunity to pray for our families and pray for our kids, and this is what we need to be doing." So we met, and we would pray, and we wrote down our prayers for our children, and we would read them together out loud. And we just had that beautiful time together. And I felt like I was on this mountaintop. It was a beautiful, beautiful time.
So where are you and John in this moment? And then I want you to tell us what God did in your marriage, and then where your marriage is now.
Okay. Well, we ended the session, and I felt amazing. I had this Bible study planned for the summer. I got to hear Joy every week, and I was being filled and filled and filled and pouring out. And then the session ended, and the winds of life started to blow. My husband lost his job. We started to have some financial issues. I very unexpectedly found out I was expecting another child. And my time with summer and all the distractions and me starting to get angry, my time in the Word just descended and it disintegrated. And this marriage that was very frail to begin with, that we had just started building these foundations for, just dropped out. I mean, the bottom just completely dropped out. I started to put myself in this hole of lies, and I let the lies sink so far down deep that I forgot all of the truth, because it wasn't coming to me into my life and in my eyes and in my ears every single day. And I was in a really bad place. I pulled out from the group that we were praying and just dropped off the face of the earth, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do anything. I was so sick and so upset about everything going on that I just allowed myself to get in this hole, and the enemy just had a hold of me. And then we went to sign up for this session, and it was all about rooting and engrafting. And I said, "God, that's what I need. Like, that is what I've needed for 32 years. I need to have these roots so deep that when the winds blow," because you guys, they're gonna blow, and they blow constantly. And just because we are believers, it doesn't mean that the pain and the troubles and the trials aren't going to come, but it's what's rooted deeper. Are the lies rooted deeper than the truth? And if you don't pull out the lies to root the truth, the lies are still going to creep up, and you're going to get knocked down when the winds blow. And so we started this session, and I've just hung and clung to every single week and every single word, and going through, what the truth says and what the lies I believe are. And it's been a struggle. My husband and I are going through counseling. There was times over the summer that I wanted to leave. Like, I just wanted to leave. There's times, we had the enemy sets it up to where I'm speaking today, and we had a very knockout, drag-out session last night. And it's just hard, and it's a daily thing. But the thing that the Lord has laid on my heart for you guys as we start to conclude this session is you have an opportunity. There are 2 ways you can go. Like, it would be amazing if we had a joy to carry in our pocket that would just speak to us every single day. Right, for some, if you're into that thing. But it would be amazing for me, at least, to have a little joy speaking truth into my pocket, or from my pocket all the time. But we don't have that. And the Lord tells us to pick up our cross daily and to renew our minds constantly. And as this session comes to a close, like, the enemy would love nothing more than to take over your mind in that space, in that gap of what we're about to go through, especially being the holidays. And I just want you guys to know that it takes daily roots. You can be on a mountaintop right now, and the winds of life can blow, and the enemy can take hold of that, and you've got to stop him from doing that. And the way to do that is to engraft yourself, to root yourself, to have those roots so down deep that when the winds blow, you feel them, but you're not knocked down.
Tell them that quote, Lindsay, that you took from last session. That's one of our all-time favorite quotes that you quote around your house all the time.
Yes. Prayer is repeating the victor's name, Jesus, into the ears of Satan, insisting on his retreat.
And that's what you have done, girl. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your vulnerability. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story that God is, I just think of where you were and where you are now. And it's transformational. It's transformational. So,
Thank you.
Sarah, I've heard glimpses of your story through Lindsay's story, similar patterns. Tell us your story.
Oh, gosh. Well, it's a long story, so I'm gonna do my best to just let the Spirit say what needs to be said. I grew up in the church. I was fortunate that I had 2 loving parents who love the Lord, and we were in church. We were in church for church, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, every day at school. I was there for parties and weddings. I lived at that church. But as I grew up, I never understood what it meant to have a personal walk with Jesus. God was kind of on the outside looking. He was there. I knew he was there. I've never questioned that. I got saved as a young child. I think I got saved like 30 times. Ask my mom. Every time there was an altar call, guys, I was there. So, my salvation, I think, was saved at a very young age, but not really understanding what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus. Like, you can talk to him like a friend, like a father, like, he's there for you. That was not ever in my realm. And, my mom didn't have moms with swords back then. They didn't have those kind of resources. My parents did the best that they knew with what they had. And in so many ways, they did everything right. I like to kind of think, when I think back on my life, on my childhood, it was charmed. It was great. I had a great childhood. I have 3 older brothers, so I was always protected. I was always, in a very tight-knit family. But God to me was what I like to call now like an on-demand God. The words from Andy Stanley, if you guys listened to that series. To me, that was what he was. You go to him when you needed something, you wanted something, or you just had some sort of need. And then once I felt satisfied in that need, I'm like, thank you, got it from here, and went about my life. And that was how I lived my life. I'll get back to something that happened to me as a child, but I just kind of want to breeze through my childhood and my adolescence. my identity was very firmly rooted in this world, in what people thought of me, what I looked like. Guys, girls, it didn't matter. I was firmly planted in my identity being a surface, just a surface. I never really wanted people to know deep down because I had some real wounds and scars. So as I grew up and I became a teenager, I was extremely rebellious. I was driving cars at 11, 12 years old, going to juvenile court. I was, I had some fun. And through high school, I was very much of the belief system that I have to hurt before being hurt. And I would live that way with my friends, with my boyfriends. I really lived that way with my brothers and my parents. I'd never wanted to let anybody in. I wanted everybody to think what I wanted them to think of me, because I never knew what God thought of me. That was not something that I would even ever have crossed my mind. So after high school, and through high school, I would say I was a serial dater. I was always in a relationship. So I wouldn't say I was promiscuous to an extent to where I was just, sleeping with the entire football team. I wasn't like that. But if I had a boyfriend, that was how I expressed my feelings, my love, whatever. That was what you did. After high school, I wanted to take a little break in between high school and college, and I wanted to kind of work and see what it is that I want to do. And I met somebody when I was 19 at a bar, because I looked like I was older. So I hung out with older people. So I'm hanging out at the bar with my fake ID, and I meet a guy, and I think he's pretty cool, and we hang out. And about a year and a half later, we got married. I was 21 when I got married, and through that engagement and that relationship, there was always a check in my spirit. That's how I know, looking back now on my life, that the Holy Spirit has always been there, because he's always kind of, you want to take a check? And I'm like, no, I got it from here. I'll let you know when I need you, kind of thing. I'm walking down the aisle. I remember I was right before they opened the doors. I remember my dad was standing there with me, and he said, it's not too late. And I was like, they opened up the doors, and I said, do you see those 12 girls in powder pink dresses and those 12 guys in tuxes? I said, yeah, Daddy, it's too late. All my friends had flown in from out of town. So we moved around quite a bit, so I had friends all over the place. So I walked down that aisle knowing I was making a mistake, and I was like, well, who am I doing this for? What am I doing? So I married this man, and it was from the honeymoon. The honeymoon was a miserable experience, and we were in a very beautiful place. We flew out west, and it was a very beautiful place, and I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Well, we get home, and 6 months later, we get pregnant. So I'm like, well, that's my purpose. That is now where my identity will be. No longer in this man that I could take or leave, but in this child. So this child was born, and he's 17, he graduates this year. He's absolutely precious. So he was born, and like a lot of people at 22, 23 years old, they think a child's going to fix something that's broken. Well, it doesn't. It just makes the broken thing messier. So I spent 5 years married to somebody that I could not understand the way he would live his life. I was very much rejected because I felt like he chose other things over me. And whether it would be alcohol or whatever, it was always something big and messy in my marriage. And I thought, gosh, I'm too young. I feel old in this, and I'm in my early 20s. I'm like, well, I'm too young for this. So I really started dialing into, I started going to church. The church started helping me with my situation. It was again, my on-demand God, he was there. When I needed him, he was like, okay. And from an early age, I asked God to protect my son, to just put a hedge of protection over him, because I didn't know what his life was going to look like. I didn't know, because I didn't know who I was or where I was, and I certainly knew I didn't want him to turn out like his father necessarily, and so I entrusted God with that child. So at 26, I went through a divorce. My son was almost 4, and that was an awakening time for me in the world, not in the Word. It was, I was relieved. I was now free from what I was living in that marriage, and I was a better mom to my son. I was able to really concentrate on him and not what else was going on. And I spent 3 years just really kind of living out those college years I didn't have. I was living for the world. There's no doubt about that. But again, there was times in that when I was like, God, I need you to show up. And when I would feel like he did show up and things were going good, I'm back into my role and the way that I was living my life. And after living as a single mom for 3 years, and I met my husband, who's my now husband, and we met, and it was kind of a whirlwind. It was kind of neat. I mean, we knew each other. We lived in the same apartment building, but we kind of knew each other by sight. And then we finally started talking, and we hit it off really quick. And our relationship was great. This guy had all of the characteristics that I had longed for in my marriage. I thought, oh, this guy is great. But again, being a believer was not top of my list at that point. I'm like, that would be great, but here's these other things that I really want, and I could check him off the list on everything. And he did. He was a believer. He came from a Christian family, but we were all just having a good time, and we got married, and it was great. My son and he have always gotten along. We really had a lot of fun the first year of our marriage. And after we were married for a year, and we decided we wanted to start our own family. It took us a little bit to get pregnant with Claire, and it took about 6 months. And then we got pregnant with her, and I was still working. I was working downtown, so I was commuting to a TV station downtown, and it was very stressful. And I worked up until a week before she was born. And then when she was born, I stayed home with her, and it was awesome. I mean, y'all, it was like that charmed life where you have this husband who loves you. He's so sweet. That we didn't have these toxic fights and all of this stuff. Everything seemed to be so great. I have this beautiful child, and she was the best baby, and I'm thinking, man, this motherhood and wife thing, this is easy, So then when my daughter was about 12 weeks old, I'm at home, and, I'm a stay-home mom for the first time in a long time, and again, I'm not rooted in the Word. I'm just rooted in my identity as John's wife, as Claire's mother, as Jackson's mother, running this household. I innocently reconnected with somebody on my past on Facebook. And at first it was like, the way the enemy comes in, it's really interesting. It's not like just running into some hot guy at a bar or at the gym. This started, and it was very innocent, this was somebody in my past who I had no closure with, and it was a situation that I never saw running into this person again until, the invent of social media, and then all of a sudden you run into all these people you haven't had closure with in your life. So this started off very, very innocently. Hey, how are you doing? Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in 12, 15 years, whatever. Then all of a sudden, it was like my husband went out of town for the weekend, went on a guy's trip. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, you're behind a computer screen, you can message, you can do stuff, and you can kind of stay at arm's length. And that was how it started for me. I went on to continue a 2-year affair with somebody. For the first year, it was emotional, it was long distance, and then the second year, it became very real. He moved to town, and I was planning my life. I was planning my exit. I was figuring out how I was going to now uproot my whole life and start a new one. And y'all, it is such a dark place. If you have the Holy Spirit in you and have at any point in your life, I'll tell you, it's not like the movies. Affairs are not like the movies. They are, they're dark and they're hard and you don't know why you're depressed all the time. You think, looking back now, I have a different perspective, but in it, I'm miserable because I thought I was miserable with my husband. I started vilifying him in my head to be able to sleep at night. I had to be like, oh, he's got to deserve this, right? You've got to manufacture things in order to be able to live with yourself. So I went on this dark, dark journey of selfishness, arrogance, of just an ugly place. I didn't know how it was going to end. All I knew that it was inevitable. I just had no idea what it was going to look like. And now, through this journey, my husband is the kind of person who I could tell he knew something was going on, but he's not the kind of guy that's like, I need to know what's going on. I never got caught, y'all. I got really good at being bad. And June 27th, 2010, I was in bed in the middle of the night, and my husband, I could hear him tossing and turning. And I'm like, oh gosh, it was almost like it was loud, it was audible, like I could hear his thoughts. And I'm rolling my eyes going, oh, just leave me alone, I just want to sleep. He gets up and he goes into the office down the hall, and I can hear him in there just rustling around, so I'm like, oh. So I walk in there and I'm like, what is wrong with you? And he's like, I don't know, I feel sick. I just feel sick. And I said, well, get over it. I'm tired, it's 3 a.m. Would you just, if you're sick, go somewhere else. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can still hear him pacing. I get back in bed and I'm laying there and he comes into the room. He said, I need you to get up. And I said, why? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to sleep. Just leave me alone. He's like, please get up. So I got up and I looked at him and he said, right in my face, he said, I've never asked you this, but I'm going to ask you right now. I need you to swear on Jackson and Claire's life that you are not having an affair. And I mean, right there, it was like my life started flashing. I started seeing my losing my children, like in death, perhaps. Had I said, oh, I swear on their life, I felt all of these curses all of a sudden circling my children, and I went, oh. I kind of took a deep breath, and I said, no, I will not swear on their life. And yes, I am having an affair, and I have been for 2 years, and I'm in love with him, and I'm leaving you. And I mean, the look on his face was like completely something I have never seen in my husband. And if you know my husband, it was a face not even his friends have ever seen. I think he expected me to lie. I mean, and say no. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I walked into my bathroom and through the bathroom and into the closet and got a bag out. And I started packing a bag because I'm like, well, here we go. And he comes into the bathroom, and he doesn't yell at me or anything. He punches a hole through the wall. I mean, through the wall, all the way to the other side of the wall. No yelling, no screaming, nothing. His hand was completely bloody. And I got a little bit scared because I thought, man, this guy's had this probably boiling up over the last 2 years, just knowing, you know something's not right in your marriage. It's not like all of a sudden, oh, what? Came out of the blue. I mean, the signs were there. But he said, you better go tell your parents before I do. And I thought, well, good point. I don't really know how that's gonna go. So I threw on some clothes and headed over to my parents. They lived about 10 minutes from us at the time, and it was, at this point, it's maybe 4:30 in the morning, and I called my parents on the way, and of course they answered the phone like any parent would in the middle of the night, and they're like, who's in the hospital, what's wrong? And I said, Mom and Dad, just put the coffee on, I'm coming over. So I went to my parents' house, and I mean, in that moment, that drive over there was such a sense of relief of just 2 years of just shackles felt were off, but I still was like, I had no idea what this next day or week or month was going to look like. It was very unclear. So I get to my parents and I tell them, and of course, I think they're in shock. I mean, they were in shock. And I feel like they may have known a little bit because this person had infiltrated into our entire family. So I feel like they kind of weren't totally surprised, but of course were shaken and devastated because they knew what that looked like. I mean, you're destroying a family. It's not, I wasn't thinking about all the people in my life I was hurting. Not just my husband, my children, my parents, my in-laws. I didn't think of any of that. It was such a selfish, dark time, dark place of just not even caring. So after I told my parents, and they were like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. I don't even know what I'm going to go home to. My husband did say, when you get home, there'll either be a lawyer here or we'll have, there'll be divorce papers here for you. And I'm like, great, let's go ahead and get this over with quick. And so as I'm finishing up with my parents and I'm saying I don't really know what I'm going to do, but this is my life now. Y'all just need to wrap your mind around it. My mom said, okay, can you just do one thing for me? Just one thing. And I said, rolling my eyes because, again, all you care about in that situation is yourself. I said, what, Mom? She goes, will you just go talk to a friend of mine? And I knew this friend of hers, and I thought, I just don't feel like doing that, Mom. I've got a lot going on. I've got a lot on my plate today. I've got a lot I need to deal with. And she said, just give her 5 minutes. I think you'll be really surprised with what she has to say. And I'm like, why, Mom? Why? She goes, just trust me. And I said, oh, fine. Thankfully, her house was on the way home. I'm not sure I would have gone out of my way. So I stopped at her house, and I got out. And I'm in like sweats, and I hadn't even brushed my teeth yet. I literally looked like I was in my pajamas, and I thought, okay, 5 minutes. This lady's got 5 minutes. It better be good. And I walked in, and I sat down with this woman. Next thing I know, it's eight hours later. I don't know. It was the end of the day. And my heart was softened that day, not changed, y'all. This has been a journey. Not changed, but softened, like, wow, if this woman could walk through what she walked through and she is where she is today, I was like, it's weird. Could that be me? I didn't know. But I thought it really sparked a lot of, and it was the first time I was able to literally just spill my guts to somebody and say, this is what I've been living for the last 2 years, and this is what I've done, and how can I ever be forgiven for that or redeemed? And this precious woman in my life had walked in my shoes and came out the other side. This tissue's all used up, y'all. And so I was curious. If anything, I was more just, really? Could that be what it could look like for me? I thought, there was so much doubt there. So I went home that day, and it was the end of the day again. I was like, I don't even know. Such a whirlwind, just crazy day. The day felt like it lasted 20 minutes. So I'm driving home, and I have no idea what I'm about to walk into, because he basically told me I should be expecting a lawyer and papers, and we're not even going to discuss this. We're done. Which was fine by me that morning. And then I get there, and I'm like, I wonder what, I figured maybe he's not even going to be there. So I get home, and it's really dark. It was weird. The house was eerily dark. My kids were gone. I have no idea. I mean, I assume, people swooped in, and again, that day is a lot of a blur to me. The house was dark and quiet, and I was just kind of sitting there on the edge of my bed. I didn't turn on any lights, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, why am I so confused as to why I'm feeling this right now? Why am I feeling the sense of relief only lasted a minute? That heavy burden and those chains came back. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is not exactly what I thought it would feel like. And as I'm sitting there, my husband walks into the bedroom. I didn't even know he was home. And I was a little bit scared, because I'm like, okay, last time I saw you, you punched a hole through the wall. So I'm like, and he walked in and kind of stood there and just stared at me, and he didn't speak. And I'm like, hi? I think he knew. I don't know if my parents communicated with him. I think he knew where I was all day. And he stood there and just stared at me, and he came over and he sat down on the bed next to me. And he put his arms around me. And he said, I don't know why, but I know that I'm supposed to stay here, and I'm supposed to love you no matter what. And I'm like, what? Why? I just told you I don't love you, and I'm leaving you. Why? He said, I don't know, because I hate you right now. I hate what you've done, but I love you. My husband never spoke to me that way. He's not a super touchy-feely kind of guy. That's not his thing. He doesn't like to talk about matters of the heart. When I do, I'm like, babe, I need you to talk to me. And he's like, oh, how about those Cubs? So, he's hearing that from him that day was, more than anything, I was just shocked. Like, you're either really stupid or crazy. I was like, why? And I kind of pushed him away, and I'm like, don't touch me. Why would you even want to touch me? And he's like, Sarah, I have no idea. This is not me, because I want you gone. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm supposed to be right here, loving you. Anyway, man, I tell you, that night, I laid in bed with my husband, and I thought, this is insane. The woman that I had spoken to that day gave me a resource, gave me a phone number of somebody to call. And I thought, well, first of all, I was curious. I was like, I gotta find out if this guy's legit. Are you really why would you want me when I'm telling you I don't want you? Who wants that? And but I felt like I needed to find out more about where that came from. So we made an appointment the next morning. My husband essentially took a vacation from work and just said, let's do this. So we got into this intensive counseling, and I'm not talking meeting with a guy for an hour once a week. We met with this guy that first week, about 4 or 5 days. And excuse me, they were about 6-hour sessions. They were ugly. They were raw. I basically was like, all right, I'm putting it out there on the table because if you really want me, you better be sure. And because I want to give him 1,010,000 more reasons to say, oh, you know what, just kidding. I can't do this. And so I remember after the first couple of sessions, I remember we were in the car on the way home, and it was a really, really rough session, really, really hard stuff to hear, hard stuff to say. And I said, well, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? You okay? And he took my hand in the car and he said, I love you more today than I did yesterday. I thought, well, shoot. This is insane. I'm like, I can tell you this other person would not love me that way. So I committed to be faithful to him through this journey. I said, okay, well, I want to see where this can go. I want to see what this looks like. And we did. We went on this healing journey, and it was very concentrated so that we could really get to the matters that, of the heart. And I committed there, and I said to God, I said, okay, all right, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here, but you better make it worth it. That selfishness was still there, and I said, you better make it worth it. And did he ever. Not only did he restore my marriage, both my husband and God were patient with me. It took me about a year to really grieve that relationship and bury it and be done with it. And from that day forward, I was faithful to my husband through that journey. I made that commitment, and I stuck to that, and I'm glad that I did, because so many things were revealed to me through that. I really, for the first time in my life, I saw Jesus himself come down and embody a human. That was not my husband that day on the side of the bed next to me with his arms around me saying, I love you anyway. I hate what you did, but I love you. That was Jesus. That was my Father. And so we went on. This has been 6 years since that then. We've gone on. We had 2 more beautiful children. We have a house full, right? But real quick, I really want to touch on the aftermath of that and the fallout of surrender. Because to me, it took over the course of those next 6 years. Yes, I was committed to my husband and committed to my marriage, but I was miserable, and I didn't know why. It was always somebody else, I was like, oh, there's something wrong with my daughter. I got to get her fixed, I got to do this, I got to do that. It was always in my own power. I had to fix what was around me. Because to me, that was my surrender. That was me like, God, I gave you the big thing. Don't ask anything more of me. And now looking back, he was going, okay, this is what it's going to look like for you then. Over the course of those 5 years or so, I struggled with depression, postpartum depression, severe anxiety disorder. For 4 months after my second daughter was born, I had hives from the top of my collarbone to the bottoms of my feet for 4 months. I looked like I had leprosy. I was covered. And I was miserable, and I couldn't understand what was wrong with me. 8 doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me, and finally I was diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder, and it was just all of this stuff in my life was sort of manifesting itself physically for me. And I could just still hear that still small voice of God saying, Sarah, you haven't surrendered it all. And I'm like, but I've given you the big stuff. Like, I am faithful to my husband. I've got these kids. I'm doing my best. I feel like a horrible mom. My sweet friend asked me forever, you need to come to Moms with Swords. You're going to love it. You know Joy from the gym. And I'm like, oh, that's not my thing. That's not my thing. I don't like being around a bunch of women. Kind of have a past with women in there. And so I went to I finally was like, fine. She's going to keep asking me if I don't just do it. And so I finally went. It was 3 sessions ago, and I showed up. And from the first day I showed up, Joy spoke so specifically and sharply at my soul. I literally couldn't come to a session without being just an absolute mess. And I'm like, yes, I'm just drinking it. I'm like, this is what I've been missing. But that session ended for me. And like yours, I was so lost after that first session. I'm like, I had all these tools, and all of a sudden the devil came in and was confusing me. And I'm like, I don't even know where to go in the Bible, or what is it Joy said? And I thought I wrote that down. I couldn't find it. So I started getting into that pattern of taking it in my own hands. And that is an exhausting place to be. So this the second session started up, and I'm like, yes, finally, she's back. And so it started up again, and I mean, it was like living water to me. It was just flowing off the stage, and I was like, oh, yes, God, thank you. But I still was like, why can I not have that close walk with you, that consistent walk with you? What is it that my friends have, my family has, everybody around me has, and I can't attain that? He's still going, you haven't surrendered at all. So during that session, there was a speaker, and some of you may have remembered her. Her testimony was incredible. Rachel Faulkner Brown, and she spoke the first session. She gave her testimony about her life, and it's an incredible. If you haven't heard it, Google her. She's incredible. She came back last session, and I thought she was giving her testimony again, and she was, but it wasn't her original testimony. It was about her 8-year-old daughter, who was struggling with issues and learning disabilities and things like that, and getting her evaluated, and it was a tough time for them. I'm like, that's it. That's what's wrong with my daughter. So I waited for her after the session, which is not like me, because I'm just not, again, not my thing. And she was talking to some ladies, and she came over to me and just ran right into me and hugged me. And I'm like, that was really weird, but kind of cool. I'm like, man. And she's like, hey, I'm Rachel. And I'm like, hi, I'm Sarah. And I don't even really know why I'm standing here. All I know is that my daughter has some of these same signs that your daughter has. And I'd love, and she's like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. So I'm telling her what we're kind of experiencing. And she's giving me all these resources, and she hands me all this stuff. And she's like, she looks at me, she kind of tilts her head. She's like, but do you think there's something in your life that could be attaching itself to Claire, something you haven't really dealt with? And I went, oh, I can think of a couple. I'm like, oh, dang it, you did not just go there. And I'm like, yeah, probably. And I mean, here we were on this first pew right here. We sat down, and I think it was an hour later, Rachel knew my entire story. And she's in tears, I'm in tears, and she's like, oh my gosh, you've got to look into healing prayer. And I'm like, healing prayer? I've heard of that, but I'm like, so you just go and pray? What? No, it's not my thing. No, it's never my thing. If I didn't think of it, it's not my thing. Right? So she gives me the name of this prayer counselor, and I went home that day and I emailed her and I said, I have no idea what I need you for, but this Rachel lady said I needed to email you. So she calls me back and she's like, well, fill out this thing and send it back and we'll go from there. So she sends me this, it's kind of like a history, like a personal history. Y'all, it took me 7 days to fill this thing out. I had stuff, I was writing on the back, I'm writing on another page, and I'm sending it back to her 7 days later, a scanned file. I'm like, good luck with that. Let me know when you want to see me in 6 months. And she's like, get down here. So I went down for my first session with this prayer counselor who was incredible. And the first time I got into prayer with her, all of this stuff just started, it was like a pot stirring. She had this holy water that she poured over me, y'all. I have never felt the presence of God more in that moment, and he showed me things from my past and gave me answers to the whys. Why did I had such a wonderful father. I didn't have daddy issues. Why was I looking for love and acceptance from other men only to just break their hearts? That was my thing, man. I had to be the one to break up the relationship. So real quick, I'll just touch on this because I know it's going over, but she had me go really deep into my past. And as a fifth grade was my first year in public school. My parents sent us to public school very reluctantly. My mom had a really hard time with that. She loved that little bubble we were in, man. She wanted to keep me protected in that bubble. And I get that now as a mom. I do. So the first time we were sent out into the world, y'all, it was great. It was awesome. It was easy. I made friends with these girls. I fit right into their little group, and I thought, this is wonderful, I'm so popular, and look, I'm looking pretty like all the girls. And well, I come to school one day, about halfway through my fifth grade school year, and they basically said, you are no longer in our little group of friends, and here you go, and hands me an envelope. And I'm like, what do you mean? Before I read it, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, well, you had a little girl from your church spend the night at your house last weekend. That is the cardinal sin of this group. You don't have anyone spend the night at your house who is not one of us. I'm like, well, nobody gave me that memo. I thought that was insane. I'm like, you're all crazy, right? You're kidding, right? You're kidding. And they were like, no, we're not kidding. They handed me an envelope with a letter in it, and I opened the letter. The letter read some of the most cruel adjectives that you could use for a person. I was so confused as to why they would speak to me that way and call me those names when I didn't do anything to deserve that. And if that wasn't, it was basically the letters, we hate you, and so does everyone in this school. And we grew up in a very small town. So the classes were small. The fifth and sixth grade were right next door to each other. And this group of fifth grade girls not only ran the fifth grade, but they ran the sixth grade too. So on the back of that letter were all these signatures. The entire fifth grade class signed it. And if that wasn't enough, the entire sixth grade class signed it. And what I had tucked really far deep into my past was a signature on that letter was one of my brother who was in the sixth grade. And at the time, it was not as big of an impact to me because I was more focused on what these people thought of me. His signature on there was just, a detail. But none of those kids in the fifth and sixth grade class were not going to sign that. They didn't want the same fate. So I kind of get that too. So in this journey of healing prayer, and Susan really had me go there. And I'm like, why do you want to take me back to that? I haven't thought of that in 20 years. I don't want to go there. That was painful. She's like, you got to go there. You got to go there, and you've got to. But the good news is you can take Jesus with you. And I'm like, okay. So, all right, here we go, Jesus. Let's go back. So I'm in this process, and I'm completely deep in this process, and my eyes are closed, and I see Jesus right there with me, and she's guiding me back there, and I'm seeing the alleyway that we would go in between the houses that I would go home to, and I'm holding the letter. And she says, Sarah, what are you doing with that letter? And I said, well, I'm holding it. And she says, give that letter to Jesus. And I said, okay. So in that place, I handed him the letter. And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, he's going to exact revenge for me. We're going to get him, those jerks. And I handed him the letter, and she said, Sarah, what is Jesus doing with that letter? And he said, and I lost it, y'all. I became this puddle, and I said, he erased my brother's name. He took my brother's name. I had not even remembered that my brother even signed that letter. He took his name off. And it just so happened that my brother and his precious wife were coming over to our house for a cookout that night. So I'm like, yes, I get to tell him. And so it was like chains were just coming off of me, and she's like, she gave me the tools to be able to do that on my own. And man, y'all, this journey since, I guess it's been about getting close to a year now, that I have just finally released these chains of just the strongholds that the devil has put on me, the unforgiveness, the bitterness for people in my life. My ex-husband, y'all, I was able to release him this past summer, and I mean to tell you, there was some kind of power in that. And I had been waiting all this time for all these people to ask me for forgiveness because they hurt me, right? God's like, no, that's not how that works, Sarah. Because my whole life, my reaction to those things is what made me in the fault. I treated my ex-husband terribly, so badly. I could not understand life from his perspective, and I hated him for it. Hated him for it. I was mean to him. When he was mean to me, I was meaner to him. And this summer, I called him up, and I just said, this is going to be weird. We haven't talked like this in 13 years. But I said, I just want you to know, we have a beautiful son together who, by the grace of God, is a mentor to me today. And I said to him, and I said, I need to ask your forgiveness for the way I treated you when we were married. You know, I thought he was going to wreck his car. He had to pull over, and he's like, God, Sarah. He's like, I never thought I would hear that from you. And I said, but I want you to know that I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive me. And he said, man, not only do I forgive you, but God, I hope you can forgive me for what I put you through. And I said, it is gone. It is done. And I mean to tell you, though we've had a really good relationship, fortunately, as far as divorce goes, it's just gotten better. I mean, there's just a different air now. And I've been able to do that with other people in my life, and it's just so releasing of just getting rid of those chains. Because that's what it is. That incident in 5th grade, I discovered, was the root of every relationship I would have from that day forward. With girls, that's why it was never my thing, y'all. I do not like girls. With boys, I needed to be who they wanted me to be, and I was going to break their hearts because I wanted people to feel the pain that I felt. And with my parents, with my brothers, obviously, but most importantly with God, my relationship with him was so in a different atmosphere. Like, I didn't feel his presence, though looking back now, y'all, he was in it all. He was in it all. And I'm so thankful for that. He pursued me. Y'all, there's so many things that I've done in my past that I shouldn't be alive today. And I could just now, looking back, it was like I'm at the edge going off, and he pulled me back. And I just, now that I've finally have that walk with him that I've desired for so long, and it's intentional, and I can't get enough of that high I get when I feel his presence. It's incredible. It happens a lot in the shower because that's the only place I'm alone ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I will just be on my knees in the shower. My poor husband, if he walks in, he's like, are you okay? But y'all, it's not perfect. My marriage is not perfect. It is sealed. Praise God, it is sealed. But there's never a day that now I look at him and I look at his face and I think, oh my God, what I did to you and what I deserve. And it's really important that y'all need to understand this about my husband, because I know I would not be that type of spouse who would be able to do what he did, I don't think. He has never, not one day, not one argument, not one instance made me suffer the consequence that I deserve for that. He's never brought it up. He's never thrown it in my face. His unconditional love for me is truly Christ's love for us, y'all. We have what we do to him daily, how we reject him daily. He's like, but I love you anyway, and I'm going to wait for you, and I'm going to chase you. And he chased me. He chased me hard until I finally was like, the light bulb went off, and I said, I got it. So when I talk surrender, I don't mean just the big stuff. Those are important. Those are huge. It's the little stuff, bad attitudes, rage. I have, that all these, and I will report that things with my daughter all of a sudden started going away. I'm like, what I was seeing in her was a reflection of where my heart was. And those things started falling away, and I'm like, oh, so it's me, not you. That's interesting. And I'm like, let me wrap my mind around that. And it's a beautiful thing because I'm like, thank you, Lord, So learning to extend that grace has been hard for me, and that's kind of the journey I'm on today, is learning to sit back and say, what you did for me, God, give me that love for my children. Give me that love for people, my mother, my husband, people around me. Give me that love, your love for them. Give me your mercy and your grace for them. Let me share with y'all what he has done for me.
I'm going to release, Sarah and Lindsay.
Sorry.
I just want us to go into this space, guys. You can go to your huddles after, but I know I've heard from your huddle leaders. I know some of you are suffering in your marriages. And I'm just going to call it out right now. Some of you come in here wearing masks every week. You come in here with a facade. I see you on Facebook. You see me on Facebook. I had a friend tell me it's a highlight reel. It really is. And some of you are suffering in your marriage. Some of you were listening to Lindsay and you're like, oh my gosh. Some of you were listening to Sarah and you're like, oh my gosh. I need you. God needs you. Your children, listen, you've been coming to moms with swords to root and plant your kids. And you yourself this morning, God's saying you are not rooted. You have not surrendered. You wonder why this keeps coming up? It's because you are lacking surrender. You will not bend your knee. Mama, don't you leave here today. If something in your stomach if you're starting to sweat, let me tell you something, like I tell you every week, that's not because it's hot in here, and that's not because you're mad. That's because the Holy Spirit is a running Father. He is a relentless pursuer of you. And there are prayer people that are stationed. There's Sarah and there's Lindsay. If you need them to pray for you, if you need somebody to pray for you, if you need to finally get real and say, my husband is lost. My husband is not the leader in my home. I think he's having an affair. I am having an affair. I don't know what it is. But don't let this moment pass. Take the mask off. Let the heaviness, like Sarah said, it's just shackles, y'all. A stronghold. It's a stronghold. In the Greek, that is a fortress. And a snare is a trapping device. And see, that's how it started with Sarah. It was a snare. It's what you'd use to trap animals with, and it just entangles for a second. And if it's left undone, it becomes a stronghold, and that in the Greek is a fortress. You literally become Elsa. You are in a fortress. Sarah has broken out of her fortress. And God wants you to break out of your stronghold. And some of you might only have a little, you might just be carrying around like a little trapping thing on your foot. Get it off today. I'm going to pray and then you go if you need prayer, and then you just go on to your huddles. Let's get real. Let's pray. Let's get honest. He knows, guys. You ain't hiding anything. I might not know. Your huddle leader might not know. But Jesus knows. He knows. The Bible says, confess your sins to one another that you might be healed. Your healing is at stake out of the confession of your mouth. Would you risk? Would you risk somebody going, wow? When Sarah told me that story, I was like, oh. But her healing was at stake. Man, Mama, your healing is at stake. Freedom. Freedom. Jesus, I pray freedom over this room. Man, I pray freedom. I declare freedom. Devil, you have been exposed today. Praise God for the word of Lindsay's testimony. Praise God for the word of Sarah's testimony, because it has defeated the enemy. and it has brought about their freedom. It is for freedom Christ sets you free. Your freedom, God, your freedom, Jesus, is what we're after. Father, set us free. God, release us, Lord. Man, release us today in this moment, God. Man, would you take your hammer, which is the word, and you are the word, and would you chisel it? God, would you chisel away at these fortresses that have been built? Do it now in Jesus' name. Amen.